Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Melinda Haring, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. We are gathered today to host an event on SBU reform in Ukraine, which is one of the most pressing reform issues in the country right now. We're joined by 5 fantastic experts, 3 of whom are MPs in the current Rada. It's my pleasure to introduce my panel. It's Mariana Bajula, the Deputy Chair of the Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence in the Rada. Next up is Oleksandr Danylyuk, the Chair of the Center for Defense Reform. Next up is Sergii Ionushas, Deputy Chair of the Committee on Law Enforcement in the Rada and also an MP. Next up is Alexandra Medvedchuk, head of the board of the Center for Civil Liberties, and she also spent a year out at Stanford's amazing Ukraine program, so she's a good friend of the Atlantic Council. And our final guest is Roman Kostenko, Secretary of the Rada's Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence, and a member of the Holos Party. Welcome, we're so happy to have you here. I want to remind everyone that we're going to have a discussion and we want you to participate. So if you have questions along the way, please go ahead and put them into Zoom or use Twitter. Now let's jump into our conversation. So SBU reform is finally about to pass, maybe next month in the Rada. The SBU is one of the only unreformed institutions in Ukraine. I want to turn to my friend Alex Danylyuk first. Alex, Ukraine has the largest security service in Europe. Why is that?
As you call it, SBU is the only unreformed institution, and that explains why it has such a high, has a big headcount. It's because it's a legacy of Soviet Union. In Soviet Union, the KGB had enormous powers, and over the 30 years of independence, country was changing, but the powers of KGB that then were kind of transformed in SBU didn't change much. So as a result, this institution have a lot of powers. They participate in a lot of processes in the country, and that's why their stuff is everywhere. Obviously there were times to reduce, first of all, they reform the institution, but the problem is that during the transition period, the SBU find themselves in the market economy. One of the biggest problems for SBU, for example, is that they participate in pretty much all spheres of life, in political life, in economic life. And many people who observe SBU from outside don't understand actually the role of this institution, a real role. Many politicians don't recognize that if SBU will cease to exist in its current shape and form, it will be a totally different country. Actually, it will be the country that everyone is hoping to have, a free country. And all businessmen will also, finally, their eventual goal would be to actually live without SBU, without their interference. There was one attempt to reduce to reduce the SBU, their headcount. It was in 2014. And one would have thought that this is an optimal time because that's when the war started. And that was the time when it was absolutely necessary to have a really effective counterintelligence. At that time, I remember I was pushing these efforts with President Poroshenko, but President Poroshenko knew very well, the SBU and how it could be used. Unfortunately, he at that time blocked the reform of SBU. And the good excuse at that time was, a credible excuse, is the country is in the war. So actually, what many people seen as actually a reason to reform SBU, leadership of the country thought it was a reason again to delay the reform of SBU. And I believe this logic is still continuing. It's still, Zelensky is now using the same logic. The country is in the war. When I was Secretary of National Security Council, SBU had Bakanov had the same logic. Country is at war. It's not the time to reform SBU. It's not the time to reduce headcount. The stuff. So what we see is that and I think that is the topic of today's discussion, is we're discussing the reform, how to reform SBU. But if you ask the head of SBU whether he's willing to reform it, his honest answer would be no. So as a result, this, I don't believe in this reform really at this time, because you cannot force it from outside.
Thanks a lot, Alex. I'm really intrigued by something that you just said. You said that Westerners don't understand just how involved the SBU is in daily life in Ukraine. Can you unpack that for us? I think you're absolutely right. We have no clue. How bad is it?
Well, I'll give you one, for example. For many years, coalitions in the parliament were built with participation of SBU for 30 years. For 30 years, it is a normal process. I was surprised that even President Zelensky, when he was meeting with his freshly elected fraction, he actually was using and not, he didn't even hide it, the folders that he saw that this is the documents on you prepared by SBU. This is like in the culture, political culture of the country. And I just don't understand, foreigners just don't get it. You don't build coalitions with the special, with such institutions, right? It's, you rely on democratic institutions and democracy. But unfortunately, in Ukraine, this is the case. And I believe many politicians just don't understand how actually to run the country without SBU. And it's a mentality. It's a mentality problem. When the new leaders also come, they talk to people, and they are given a solution that SBU will solve certain problems for you, which are impossible even to imagine in other countries.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alex. That's really helpful. Alexandra, I'd like to turn to you. Do you agree with Alex? So the SBU is unreformed, and he says that one of the reasons why it hasn't been reformed is because of the war, and that was used as an excuse. We'll do it later. We have to focus on the war. Is that the only reason, or are there more reasons why the SBU remains unreformed?
It was an official reason. And I totally agree that if we want not to lose this war with Russia, we need effective special service which are able to effectively collect, analyze information about threats to national security. But unofficial reason for non-reforming SBU for all these years, because it's very comfortable to have a huge powerless state bodies which can be used as an instrument to prosecute opposition, to prosecute journalists, civil society activists, anti-corruption organization, also to interfere into economic sphere or to promote their own interest.
Thanks a lot. That's really helpful. Okay, Mariana, I would like for you to please tell us about the bill. So as I understand it, the bill is about to be presented in the second for a passage in the Rada next week. What's in it? Does the current draft eliminate the anti-corruption and organized crime department of the SBU? Does the current bill reduce the number of SBU employees? And what other concerns do you have with the bill? Your turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Firstly, thank you for such event, and it's wonderful that we have such those possibility to discuss. And I will agree with previous comments that our SBU security service was not transformed and reformed during these 30 years. And it's not only about some corruptional risk and culture, it's about those dramatic, tragic outcomes that we have. We have some kind of fiasco, may I say in this way, and I said it previously, of security service of for classical strategy of security service, because we lost our territories. We are in war, and in 2013 actually our security service was controlled by other states. It's the worst situation that security state service can have. And also I will agree with those comments that it was comfortable to have such political and overpowered instrument during all these years, despite the such tragical and non-efficiency outcomes that we had. From other side, to use it like a political instrument. So the transformation, and finally, and also I will disagree with comments that the situation now is the same. No, the present president initiated that security service finally should be changed. And paradox in that even yes, we have resistance from the system and some discussions even with the new chair of the security service, but it's not about this. The importance that we have the political will of the president and political will of the parliament, and it's two critical components that make the for us the hope that finally we will have transformation. What with the bill? The bill passed the so-called first reading, so it is now in the preparation process for the second reading, and second reading is supposed to be final. We are going to have second reading this summer, even June. So the committee is going to work with the bill to recommend to the parliament next week. And what is in the bill? Firstly, it's the aim is to make finally security service. So some kind of special service for Ukraine, not law enforcement body, not some hybrid, to make clear functionality and clear responsibilities. Of course, to make it properly resourced. So to have the new budget and also the new structure of the budget for security service. To make the security service more compact and to establish parliamentary and actually civil and democratic oversight on it. And of course, to make it stronger, but stronger in the way of how the special service strong should be. So it's firstly, it's the counterintelligence possibility and capacity, and of course to make it a reliable partner in the way of how to work in cooperation, and also in the way how to make it understandable. So on this stage, in this moment, we still have some kind of pre-final draft. And also I dare to say that there was decision, and it's not in the contradictions with our legislation from me to publish the draft even before it will pass the committee, to reduce the risk and to engage our civilians, our society, to find those risks, some amendments, some moments that can unbalance the future of security service. And in that way, I'm very thankful that actually our experts, our non-governmental organization, even the specialists in the security service that cannot join to working group just directly, they are very far from it and very far from the leadership, but now they have opportunity to see the project of the law and to work with it. We have great feedback. And from other side, you can say, but it's special service. It should be closed document? No, of course, it's obvious. Law is open document, so we can engage civilian society to check it in those points which is about human rights and firstly. What is in the transformation? As I previously said, it's other focus. It's to short as much as possible law enforcement component and to make bigger and capacity of counterintelligence, anti-terroristic actions, to reduce the amount of security service. And in that way, frankly, I had a lot of resistance because, as it was mentioned before me, we in the war, we in the special period, we should not be shorter, we should not have less people inside the service. Now the service is really huge, but the moment is that it's about bureaucracy, about different functions which were historically packed in this body, and it's not about the of course, we have efficiency in counterintelligence, we have efficiency in many actions, but it's not about this system and main priority in it.
Wonderful.
And speaking about the short,
that's great, Mariana. Thank
okay.
you so much. Yeah, that's great. I want to bring in some other panelists. Thank you. That was a really good overview. Sergii Ionushas, a question for you about the current draft. I understand it's still changing some and you're still open for discussion. Does the current draft that's going to the Rada for a vote, does it eliminate the anti-corruption and organized crime department?
Hello, first of all, I wanna thank you to the organizer for this invitation. It is a great honor for me to take part in this online event. So if you're talking about current situation with this bill, yes, this bill is really adopted by the parliament in first reading. It provides the SBU on the function of anti-corruption and the economy. But really, the last variant of this bill I received only yesterday evening. But if we're talking about situation at the same time, so I suppose the key provision of the draft law to close the SBU economic department, which will allow the newly created Bureau of Economic Security to take of this responsibility. The SBU will focus on protecting state security, counterterrorism and counterintelligence. I have one of the author of the bill 4392, which I have already talking about. This bill completely deprives investigation agency of security service of Ukraine to right to investigate economic and corruption offenses. As for another thing of this bill, I'm particularly disagree with our colleague. Only Volodymyr Zelensky starts this reform, and I agree with colleague. It's very important for our security to going and moving forward. So if you're talking about another important things of this bill or another questions, if should we leave or pre-trial investigation of security service of Ukraine? So in a sphere of national security of any country is very sensible, this area of secret service. And my colleague talking about war, talking about Donbass of Crimea. So I think it is forms the principles that I think when it comes to depriving this bill of the function of pre-trial investigation of crime, I think we should leave some part, maybe particularly the sphere of national security. Personally, I will support the idea of the prevention of special service and usual functional investigation of the crimes, but categorically against indication in this law of special dates. So why? Because our country is not ready to move some very important investigation to another organ. It's not questions about security service, it's questions about another organ. Who will investigate these crimes? And now I'm not ready to give the answer. So, very
Sergei,
important.
let me stop you there. That's really great. But is there anything else in the current draft that you don't like, that you want changed before the Rada votes? Or are you satisfied?
I received, yes, first, I received the last draft law only yesterday. It's very important for our country. This question, it's not very important, it's extremely important for our countries. So you understand, we should check this draft law, because the working group and experts and publicity, didn't receive the last version, because really, I received previous version last week. So if I received previous version last week and new one this week, I'm not ready to talk in clearly what in this draft law.
Okay,
But if you're talking about principle, so it's totally, I'm totally agree with colleague. We should move out the economic investigation and anti-corruption investigation. If you're talking about economic, it should be a special organ which will already vote for that. If you're talking about anti-corruption, it should be NABU, of course.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sergei. I'd like to bring in our colleague, Roman Kostenko. Dobry din, Roman. I would like you to tell us about the current bill. Do you have any other concerns? Do you agree with what Sergii Ionushas and Mariana have said? What are your thoughts on the bill?
Good day. I will speak in my translator that very well tell about this bill. Okay. Я хотел бы сказать в первую очередь, что действительно сейчас это время, когда нужно принимать законопроект и делать реформы в наших спецслужб.
I want to tell you that this is the best time to make reforms and adopt this bill.
И если мы говорим о реформах, мы должны понимать, что мы должны отойти от советской системы, и мы должны все-таки идти в сторону западной системы и сделать нашего СБУ классическую спецслужбу.
We should think not in Soviet type of vision. We should think like our Western partners and make SSU as a classical special service.
Я сам есть полковником СБУ, я прослужил больше 12 лет, скажем, в службе безопасности и знаю проблематику той системы, которая у нас работает с 91 года.
I'm a colonel of security service of Ukraine. I served for 12 years in security service, and I know all these problems of this system.
И действительно считаю, что законопроект и его закон, который есть, он устарел, потому что те нормы, если мы будем говорить и о коррупции, и о экономике, они, возможно, были в 90-х, они были, эти подразделения введены, и они тогда имели смысл. Сейчас они уже устарели в связи с многими факторами, в том числе и созданием там антикоррупционных органов и других органов, которые, получается, дублируют все эти функции.
I think the SSU law which we have now is not effective, and maybe it's some kind. It was good in previous decades. I mean, it's anti-corruption and economical crimes investigating, but for now it's not effective for SSU.
Мы должны идти к классической спецслужбе, которая должна заниматься исключительно контрразведкой, борьбой с терроризмом и не заниматься следствием в априори.
And for my opinion, I think SSU should be a special service, and it should be the most, the main. It
it should make deal with counterterrorism and counterintelligence, but not with investigation of crimes.
Это позиция и нашей политической силы, и вообще позиция комитета, которая была прописана в первом чтении, которая была принята парламентом в первом чтении.
This is position not only of my political party holders, but it's position of our committee.
Мы должны понимать, что нам, если мы говорим об борьбе с коррупцией, мы должны от этого отходить, потому что это не задача спецслужбы. Но при этом, когда мы говорим, что СБУ не должна заниматься экономикой, мы должны понимать, что СБУ будет заниматься экономикой, но только не злочинами. На русском. Окей, только не преступлениями, а контрразведывательной защиты нашего сектора экономики.
As I said, SSU shouldn't deal with anti-corruption and investigation of crimes. And when I said that we shouldn't deal with investigation of economical crimes, I mean only crimes. But I think SSU should deal with counterintelligence in economical sphere. I mean economical espionage.
Для того, чтобы нам сделать, мы сейчас говорим об основном законопроекте, и он как бы прописывает основу всего. Но нам еще нужно говорить, что ко всему этому нам нужно будет принять второй законопроект, который мы внесем изменения в наш процессуальный кодекс, для того, чтобы реформа была полной.
Now we are talking about the main bill, but the problem is that we should have two bills together. The second should be a bill about criminal procedures.
Ну и можно говорить много, но я скажу, что основное еще мало будет принять этот законопроект, и нужно будет еще добиться того, чтобы на уровне СБУ, и это будет зависеть от главы СБУ и их руководителей, чтобы они могли нормально ввести его в действие. Это очень важно, это не менее важно, чем сам законопроект принять. И потому мы хотим этим законопроектом обнулить всех руководителей, которые после его принятия будут выведены за штат и вновь по-новому через комиссию будут назначаться на должностя, для того, чтобы все-таки реформа была полной, и с самого начала мы начали уже эффективно работать.
Okay, this adoption of this law is not the last step. First of all, we should adopt the law, and after that, we should the head of SSU should make good reforms in this service. But we should for making reform effective, we should hire new head of SSU.
He's calling for the SBU to hire a new person. Is that correct?
Чи ви хочете наняти нову людину?
Мы хотим, чтобы те люди, которые сейчас руководят СБУ, и все начальники департаментов полностью уже зашли по новым требованиям, которые будут выдвигаться в новом законопроекте.
We want to make new procedures, and we want all these people who are now in charge of the SBU that they will hire by new procedures.
Okay. Thank you so much, Roman. Thank you. That was very, very helpful. It's so good to have someone with expertise, someone who's worked at the SBU. Thank you so much for joining us. Really glad to have you here. Okay, I would like to turn now to Alex and Alexandra. We've heard from our MPs and heard about the bill, and we'll definitely bring you back in on the questions. But I'd like to just get real for a minute. One criticism I hear is that the SBU bill sounds pretty good on paper, and our MPs have explained why it will improve things. But the criticism I hear is that it won't actually change anything. Some claim that there will be no reform well, Bakhanov remains the head. What do you make of that claim? I'm going to go to Alex first and then Alexandra, please. Alex, I can't hear you. Try again. I can't hear you. No, okay. I'm going to go to Alexandra. You fix your AV. Alexandra, please, your turn.
I will step in before Oleksandr will solve his technical issues with a thesis that for me as a human rights defender and to speak on behalf of human rights community, we very rarely declare some political claim just to appoint or revoke from the head of some state bodies, some person, because it's political claim. I think that the discussion has to be, and it's much more important for us as for citizens for Ukraine, to build such kind of system with a new reform in which even not ideal person on the head has to be in line with rule of law and with limitation which ingrained in the security service law and fulfill effectively the function which has to be provided by this law. And unfortunately, human rights organization and anti-corruption organization has seen a lot of problems in this draft law, which is supposed to be voted next month. We are totally sure that this draft law retains the SBU's law enforcement function, that this draft law allows the security service to investigate corruption and smuggling cases, provides opportunities for the security service to disproportionately interfere with freedom of expression and privacy. And last week is very big a bunch of problems that this draft law doesn't establish mechanism for monitoring the activities of secret service. And I will try to provide several examples why we state on this argument. Because when we speak about less security service and decreasing law enforcement function, we speak about pre-trial investigation and operative and search activities. And if we even live beyond the frame that this decline will be in 2024, when the part of law enforcement function supposed to transfer to State Bureau investigation, according to this draft law, established a new regime of regulation, which is named counterintelligence regime. And all methods, all functions, all forms of coercion and force, which usually used in pre-trial investigation or operative and search activities, will be used in this counterintelligence regime. And what is even more dangerous for us as for citizens for Ukraine who know how work was by security service this several years, that there is no limitation in the draft law for this function, and there is no regulation by criminal procedure code for this counterintelligence sphere. So it provides a huge opportunity for security service hide the law enforcement function under the so-called counterintelligence regime and continue misused the function which we observed during the recent years. And there are a lot of problems with human rights in this draft law. And the new novel, which we with surprise see the new versions creating the temporary detention facilities which security service of Ukraine will have. Such kind of facilities has no security service in no country of NATO. And this is a huge violation of declared principle that we try to decrease the law enforcement functions. And also, when we see the draft law, which was mentioned by my colleague Sergei, I mean the draft of law which changed criminal procedure code, the registration number is 4392. In this draft law, we also saw that security service remains the pre-trial investigation functions, and it's also a huge surprise for us because it's violate this declaration that we decrease the law enforcement function in this draft law.
Yeah. Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much, Oleksandr.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I don't know, with some technical issues. Well, my answer to your question is the following. I was making the claim that it doesn't matter what the law is. Actually, I can even tell you that we do not need this law at all. You usually, if you're thinking about the governance system, you need a law when you introduce new powers. And I don't think SBU needs new powers. If you want to restrict powers, that is sufficient. If you're really serious about reform, it's sufficient to appoint a head, not sufficient, but actually absolutely necessary to appoint a head of SBU who wants to reform. That's how any reform starts. And actually in 2019, that was my approach. If I were head of SBU, I wouldn't need a new law. I could actually, if president is supportive, we can actually approve a new structure of SBU. We can reduce the head count. And we can do pretty much everything necessary without any need for the law. So that's my argument. And if there is a law, then as Roman said, a lot depends on what is actually will of head of SBU to implement it. Because if SBU is not willing to reform and leadership, they will sabotage this law. And when we look at the law, there are a lot of areas where you already can see an attempt to sabotage it. First of all, is investigative powers that remain until the 2024 or 2025, depending on whether it's existing or new investigations. Or potentially there is a risk that they will stay indefinitely there. Second is the headcount reduction. It's actually ridiculous to delay it until 2025. It's absolutely ridiculous because the main argument is too expensive. Well, if you ask business, would they actually finance this? They will say yes. They will be happy to introduce like new small special tax to reform SBU because eventually it's cheaper for them and cheaper for the economy. So there are a lot of actually comments to this draft law, but my question to Mariana, is it really the draft that you published yesterday? Is it like official position of the committee, or we're discussing something absolutely, irrelevant at the moment? Because that's a key issue. If it's your initiative, then how certain are you that this, you would be able to push necessary changes in the committee? It's a question actually to Roman as well, because he's chairing this committee.
Wonderful, thank you, Alex. Mariana, your
yes,
turn.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, our committee is working in some kind of project way, and when the head of the project is delegated to lead some project, he's responsible for the project and the quality of it. So I'm the head of the project delegated by the committee as a project of the transformation of security service. So I published the variant, which is about 90% of prepared to work with the committee meeting, but I can say that it's mostly the same that we will accept. Of course, some moments will be discussed. So the same is with other projects, with other heads of the projects in our committee, and the same was also while preparing for the first reading because there were several drafts, and when I published for the working group the draft for the first reading, the same draft actually except some discussable moments, but just few, was published after meeting of the committee. So Roman can make additional comments. And you see, also, I agree with that, with some internal will of the system, they can make the transformation every day according to the Euro-Atlantic principles and request of the time. But we have such resistance, and we have the resistance for 30 years, which only became stronger and stronger. And even I have resistance from the head of security service, as I previously said, because it's just not about personalities, it's about system. And the new framework of the law is to relaunch the security service. Without that framework, we have no chances to transform so encapsulated service which was formed during these 30 years, and which is continuous from the Soviet Union. So about law enforcement functions, one very small comment. Those project of the law which in the law enforcement committee to reduce the law enforcement function is for transit period, because the first reading and the principal position of the Committee of National Security, Defense and Intelligence, and what we presented to the president, that we should make the security service without law enforcement function. So our project is a framework, and of course other legislation should be made according to this framework, should be finished after this main framework would be accepted by the parliament.
Thank you so much. I know Roman wants to say something, and I know Sergei wants to say something. Alex, I have one very short directed question though. Given everything that our MPs have said about this bill, given your position, what advice would you have for the West? This bill clearly has problems. It has legal problems. It has institutional problems. What advice, if the Rada is voting on this bill next week or in 2 weeks, what should the West be doing?
You know my position that I don't believe in reforms when there is no leader for reforms. So actually, I'm very skeptical. I even don't know what to advise. I would advise actually just to push some changes in the law, because to actually to cut and to kill investigative powers as of now, right? To speed up the reducing the headcount. There are many comments that actually, well, that could be actually pushed by the West. But I think the main point is who is the leader of reform, and I think that should be the position of the West. Show us the leader, we will help you with this reform.
Yep. Great, thank you, Alex. Alex and Alexandra, I hope that you guys will grab a pen and write a blog post for the Atlantic Council and explain all the problems in the blog, because no one in Washington understands. This bill is very complicated, and as Sergei said, there's a new version. We all need to study it. But your homework is to write us a piece and tell us where.
Sorry, just a minute. One moment.
Mariana, I need to let Sergei and Roman say something, and then I'll come to you. I promise. Sergei has raised his hand 5 times. Sergei, go ahead, please.
Colleague, why we need the reform? To improve something. So once again, the objective of such reform can never be actual destruction of existing system without the establishment of other effective mechanisms to ensure state security. In case of determination of SBU performance function for investigation nationally security crimes, the powers should be transferred to appropriate law enforcement agency, which should have a sufficient state of employers with relevant experience, education, necessary materials, technical issues, and most important, it must have necessary operational capabilities and up-to-date intelligent information, as well as intelligent frames, both public and confidential. So it should be not forgotten today Ukraine is country of war, part of which was annexed by the Russian Federation. So investigation of crimes against the basic of national security of Ukraine is possible exclusively by the state agency of special purpose with law enforcement function, which provides state security of Ukraine, which today is SBU. I'm already told that other law enforcement agencies such as DBR of NAU were created after annexion and the beginning of military action in Ukraine, do not have any operation capabilities in the occupied territories and will not be able to properly perform function of this investigation. And if you're talking about NATO, I want to say that I was together with a colleague, I was in December 19, when we're talking about reform, with other deputies in Geneva Center for Security. During the exchange of experience with representatives of experts in different countries, we found that the internal security service for a number of European states and NATO, of course, also authorized to carry out of pre-trial investigation crimes. For example, Federal Office of the Protection of the Constitution and Counter-Terrorist Austria, Danish Security and Intelligence Service, the Estonian Internal Security Service, Norwegian Police Security Service, Internal Security Agency Poland, and Swedish Security Service, etc. So we should going forward, but we will think in our steps, we will not destroy the security of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergei. I agree with you 1000%, and I think everyone does here. The question is just how to do it. Roman, it's your turn, and then Mariana. Go ahead, Roman.
Да, я буквально два слова прокомментирую, что действительно есть спецслужбы в Европе, которые объединяют в себе и контрразведывательные, и следственные действия, функции.
I want to tell a few words about, yes, I agree, there are special services in Europe which have these combined counterintelligence and investigation functions.
Но мы сейчас говорим конкретно о Украине и о том, какой стала служба безопасности за эти 30 лет независимости.
But now we are talking about Ukraine and its security service and what happened with this service for last years.
Сейчас ее надо лечить, и, возможно, там через 10-20 лет мы вернем туда следствие. Но сейчас я поясню, почему это не нужно оставлять.
Maybe we will make such a combination in future, but now we should make some medicine with security service.
Сейчас следствие используется как показатель. Когда работает наш контрразведывательный орган, основная задача, чтобы показать эффективность, служба безопасности показывает количество уголовных дел, что в условиях войны и в условиях работы есть неприпустимым. Мы работаем на показатель, а не на качество.
Okay, now this investigation function in SSU is using only for formal indicator. They use it for some as indicators for our president to show their work.
И сейчас мы должны основное сделать, это сфокусировать спецслужбу на классическую контрразведку для защиты нашего суверенитета вот с позиции спецслужбы и максимально убрать от нее дублирование функций и правоохранительные функции.
We should first of all focus on the counterintelligence function and reduce this function of investigation crimes.
И еще раз повторюсь, Александр говорил, что он сможет реформировать по любому закону. Я тут как бы спорить не буду, но вопрос в том, что может Александр сможет, но не факт, что кто-то придет завтра, который будет пытаться делать это по-другому. И нам нужно все-таки сделать закон, который создаст институцию, а не подразделение, которое будет нуждаться в профессионалах, потому что мы есть свидетелями были, когда руководили люди, которые до этого там не были никогда в СБУ.
Okay, Oleksandr says that he could change reform SSU with any law, but we couldn't said that tomorrow would be some head of SBU like Oleksandr. That's why we should make this bill such that SSU should work effectively for any manager.
Поэтому нам нужно сейчас работать на классическую спецслужбу с уменьшением правоохранительных функций в СБУ. Возможно, еще раз скажу, в будущем мы вернемся к тому, что мы вернем следствие. Но сейчас нам нужно создать классическую контрразведку, которая будет защищать нашу страну. Потому что страна в этом сейчас нуждается. Не в показателях, а в конкретной работе.
Okay. Maybe in future we will make a security service such law enforcement service, but now we should focus on the classic special service, because in nowadays, in case of war with Russia, we should have a strong defense from SSU.
Wonderful. Thank you, Roman. Mariana, your turn.
Thank you. Yes, as I previously said, our security service as special service was not effective during these years as a special service, not just like hybrid body. And I want to ensure, and you can observe how the parliament will work, that there is no such big discussion about the policy of security service. We have the concept of the first reading, and we can discuss some moments, but we are going according to this concept. According to this concept is a special service. Yes, we have some also additional discussion with the law enforcement committee, because they are looking on the security service in law enforcement focus. It's naturally, it's some kind of maybe a little bit professional deformations that have each representative of the branch. But in the process, we will finish, and we will finish with the second reading. We will finish this summer, and what we need actually the active, our civil society, active partners to make the cooperational environment to change our security service. Of course, if we are speaking about professional moments, it's more internal, but speaking about human rights, as now we are strongly connected with the with different organizations, and even before committee, before the room of parliament, to reduce the risk. And thank you. Just let's work together. Let's observe how the transformation will be. And actually, I'm totally agree that we need to make the institution and proper framework, not to depend on personalities, great political will, etc., to establish the institution for years. It's banal, but it's very complicated.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mariana. Thank you for your work on this bill. I know it's not easy. Sergei, thank you for your work on this bill. And Roman, it's great that you guys are actually moving something forward. It's very exciting. So now we have 5 minutes remaining. We have a lot of great questions. We call this our blitz round. We go fast. And your job as panelists is to answer very quickly so we can get to all of our questions. First question is from Sergei Pun. He says, dear colleagues, a very interesting discussion, but to make it fully objective, it would be a good idea to hear from the official position of the service. How can the service present its position on the issue? Sergei Ionushas represents the official position, and we would love to host Mr. Bakhanov. He's always welcome to speak on our platform. Sergei Ionushas, if you could relay that message, I would be very, very grateful. Question here, will all military security services be included in the new state security service? Who wants to take that? Sergei Ionushas or Mariana? Will all military security...
What's the position of security service?
Will all military security services be included?
Okay, I will answer. Thank you. Actually, the transformation is about also demilitarization. But demilitarization is to make the special ranks, to introduce fully the state public administration component, like state service, and also to reduce the military component of our security service. Am I right? There was a question about the militarization. Yes.
Yeah, you are right,
So,
but it's not in the law, unfortunately, Mariana.
now
You're absolutely
on
right
the
what you're
law.
saying, but it's not in the law. In
It's
draft
on
law.
the law. It's on the law by the second reading, and that's why I asked to observe and to see what we will have in the room of parliament, because we have about 3,000 of amendments by the second reading, and actually more than 2,500 are unique. So it's a result of work of offices or members of parliaments, and now we are on the finalization stage. And actually, we published several. I published, and it was sent to the working group and etc. Several stages of finalizing the document, and there is the demilitarization. The possibility for military personnel is left for special for special bodies. It's military counterintelligence. Actually, it's special. Just how it in English, spецпідрозділ.
Special unit.
And like special units, you're right, and also for security, just like security. And also it's only possibility, because the whole security service will be demilitarized. Even now we introduce the roadmap of demilitarization and amendments, and it will be introduced to the committee. You will see, you will just see about it.
Wonderful.
So, and it's also joined with the financial possibilities of security service, which I mentioned previously.
Thank you, thank you. I have one last question, and this is for Roman Kostenko. This may be the most important question. Dear Ukrainian friends, by law, you can change an institution as a body, but how do you change the mentality, the mindset, and the ethics? Do you have any thoughts on that, sir?
It's about check and balances.
Да, мы же понимаем, мы это понимаем, и в этом законе непосредственно есть подходы новые к образованию, мы должны делать ставку на будущее.
We understand this requirement, and in this bill we have some new points about education.
И мы хотим сделать реформу все-таки в образовании. Мы понимаем, что закон сам изменит самые принципы работы СБУ, а нам нужно еще поменять ментальность людей, которые там 30 лет работали и все-таки нарабатывали ее. И я думаю, что нужно это будет делать непосредственно через образование, меняя подходы к образованию.
First of all, I think we should begin from reform of education, because we can change the mentality of the SBU people only, I think, from the young people, first of all.
Мы говорим, что реформа, она не будет работать завтра. Мы закладываем это уже вот в нашу независимость, чтобы это работало дальше и эффективно. Возможно, этого результат будет через 10-15 лет, потому что нам уже навязали сейчас, что реформа должна показать результат сейчас. Это неэффективно, и, как правило, такого не бывает. Мы знаем, что нам это нужно сделать на будущее, и уже чтобы это установилось на постоянно.
Reform, it's not a very short process, I think. Maybe these changes of mentality we will see in a few years, maybe 10 years, I think, but it's our aim.
We need to start now.
Absolutely. Roman, thank you. I'm sorry for giving you the hardest question last. I'm so glad you were able to join us. Alex Danylyuk, I saw a finger. You wanted to make one more comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, very quickly, a brief comment. I think, talking about ethics, and basically, it was a very important question for Roman. I think part of the answer is it's not even the question for the law and for the SBU, but actually for people who give instructions to SBU. And I think, first of all, president of the country, doesn't matter what his name, currently it's Zelensky, if he continues give orders, for example, to collect information on MPs or some political opponents, or, for example, to actually fight for SBU to fight with smuggling, that will never create the environment for SBU to actually work on what it's intended to do, and that will never be able to help to change the mentality. I think it's very important, these orders that are coming, and first of all, the mentality of the people who use SBU needs to change.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. I'm so sorry, we're out of time.
30 seconds.
Mariana, we're out of time. We need to have another discussion. I think we're going to have a longer discussion because this bill is very complicated. And I want to give you guys enough time to actually talk through the legal parts of it. I think there's 3 or 4 elements we didn't have a chance to talk about. We'd love to have all of you come back and discuss it in more detail once Sergii Ionushas has had time to study it, once we've had time to study it. Thank you for joining me, Mariana, Alex, Sergei, Alexandra, and Roman. This is a very good discussion. Let's do it again very soon, in a week or 2. We wish you the best. Get it right. We're watching. We want to help. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Until next time, see you. Have a wonderful day and see you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.